The trajectory of this object is very peculiar. It actually lies in the orbital plane of the planets around the Sun.
The official story is that 3I Atlas is just a comet. But the thing nobody tells you is that this comet is behaving like a machine. And now, Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb has gone on record with a shocking new claim based on the latest telescope data. He warns that this isn't just a technological object, it's a mothership. And just hours ago, it began deploying what he can only describe as smaller metallic probes into our solar system. This isn't a natural event. This is an arrival. And what these probes do next could change the course of human history forever. The anomaly from the void. For months, the interstellar object designated 3I Atlas had been a ghost in our solar system, a source of hushed whispers and fierce debate among the world's top astronomers. You see, this wasn't just any visitor from deep space. From the moment it was detected, it broke all the rules. Its speed was impossible, reaching over 130,000 miles per hour, far too fast for any object to be captured by our sun's gravity. Its trajectory was another puzzle. Instead of tumbling in from a random direction, it sliced into our solar system on a path almost perfectly aligned with the ecliptic plane, the flat disk where all our planets orbit. The odds of that happening by chance are, to put it mildly, astronomical. Many people are crazy about finding new comets, but this one was different. What many overlooked in the early days was the work of one man who refused to dismiss the anomalies: Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb. After the controversy surrounding Oumuamua, the first interstellar object that also showed unnatural acceleration, Loeb had urged the scientific community to take these visitors seriously. He argued that we should consider the possibility that we were seeing not just rocks, but technological artifacts from other civilizations. While his colleagues scoffed, Loeb and his Galileo project kept watching, pointing their own telescopes at 3I Atlas, searching for any sign that this was more than just a comet. And they found it. The most shocking fact was in the object's chemical signature. The James Webb Space Telescope detected a massive plume of gas around 3I Atlas, but it wasn't the water vapor we see in typical comets. It was a bizarre mix of carbon dioxide and, even stranger, pure nickel vapor without any corresponding iron. In our universe, nickel and iron are forged together in the hearts of stars. They are cosmic partners that are never found apart in nature. Finding pure nickel was like finding a car engine in the middle of the desert with no car around it. It suggested the material had been processed, refined, and engineered. Then, there were the headlights. The Hubble telescope captured images showing a strange, persistent glow coming from the front of the object, not from a tail behind it. Comets don't have headlights. The glow, Loeb argued, wasn't reflected sunlight. It seemed to be an artificial emission, a steady light source that defied any natural explanation. But the final piece of the puzzle was its movement. 3I Atlas wasn't just flying, it was navigating. It made tiny, almost imperceptible course corrections, nudging itself onto a path that would give it a perfect flyby of Mars before slingshotting around the Sun. For Avi Loeb, the evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't a comet at all. It was a probe, an intelligently controlled object sent to survey our solar system. He began to theorize that its massive size, estimated to be over 20 miles long, and its strange emissions meant it could be a mothership, a carrier vessel designed for a long interstellar journey. It was a bold, almost unbelievable claim, and his critics were quick to dismiss it. But then, something happened that silenced them all. The probes were not just a theory, they were real. The children of Atlas. The alert came from an observatory in Chile in the dead of night. An automated system monitoring 3I Atlas flagged a sudden dramatic change in its brightness. At first, the team assumed it was a standard cometary outburst, a chunk of ice breaking off and vaporizing in the sun's heat. But when they zoomed in, they saw something that made their blood run cold. You see, it wasn't a single fragment. It was a cloud of smaller objects, dozens of them, separating from the main body of 3I Atlas in a slow, deliberate, and perfectly coordinated maneuver. This was not the chaotic explosion of a comet breaking apart. This was a deployment. Within hours, every major telescope on the planet, including the James Webb, was pointed at the same patch of sky. The most shocking fact was what the high-resolution images revealed. The objects were not jagged pieces of rock and ice. They were uniform in shape, long, thin, and metallic, reflecting sunlight with a strange, unnatural gleam. And they were moving in formation, spreading out into a precise grid pattern around the mothership. The thing nobody tells you is that these objects, now being called probes by Loeb's team, began to communicate with each other. They emitted faint, rhythmic radio pulses in a narrow frequency band, a pattern so structured and complex it could not be random cosmic noise. Avi Loeb, in a leaked internal memo that quickly spread across the internet, was blunt. "We are witnessing the deployment of a fleet of autonomous or remote-controlled probes. The mothership, 3I Atlas, has completed its primary survey and is now releasing its secondary explorers." His critics were stunned into silence. The evidence was right there on their screens. A massive 20-mile-long object that had traveled for thousands of years from another star was now methodically releasing a swarm of smaller metallic probes into our solar system. The implications were terrifying. What was their mission? What were they looking for? And why were they so interested in Mars? The probes didn't just move randomly. They began to adjust their trajectories. Using the same kind of impossible non-gravitational acceleration that 3I Atlas itself had displayed, the smaller objects began to fan out. Some headed on a direct course for the asteroid belt, a region rich in minerals. Others adjusted their paths to fly by Jupiter and Saturn, perhaps to study our gas giants. But a small group, about a dozen of them, made a sharp, deliberate turn. Their new target was clear and unmistakable: Mars. This wasn't a random drift. This was calculated navigation on a scale we had never witnessed before. The world's space agencies could only watch, their own probes on Mars suddenly becoming the unwitting observers of a potential first contact event. The mothership was here, and its children were on the move. A silent language. What many overlooked in the initial chaos was the behavior of the probes themselves. They weren't just flying in formation, they were thinking. At least that's how it appeared. The swarm of metallic objects began to exhibit what roboticists call emergent behavior. You see this everywhere in nature, from flocks of birds to schools of fish, where individual agents with simple rules create complex, intelligent group patterns without a central leader. The probes around 3I Atlas were doing something similar, but on a cosmic scale. They maintained perfect spacing, adjusted to each other's movements in real time, and communicated with those faint radio pulses, creating a silent, intricate dance in the void. The most shocking fact came when the group of probes heading for Mars began their approach. As they neared the red planet, they didn't enter orbit. Instead, they spread out, forming a perfect geometric net around the entire planet, as if they were scanning it. For several hours, they held this position, their radio signals growing more complex and rapid. Data from NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter showed faint, anomalous energy readings on the Martian surface directly below the probes, particularly in a region known as Cydonia, the same area where the infamous face on Mars was photographed decades ago. Coincidence? Avi Loeb didn't think so. He suggested the probes weren't just scanning, they were activating something. The thing nobody tells you is that this wasn't a one-way communication. After several hours of intense scanning, something on Mars seemed to answer back. A powerful, focused radio burst erupted from the Cydonia region, a signal far stronger and more structured than anything our own rovers could produce. It was a direct reply, a handshake across millions of miles of empty space. The probes immediately broke their formation, gathered into a tight cluster, and then, in a flash of impossible acceleration, they shot away from Mars, back toward the main body of 3I Atlas. They had found what they were looking for. This event, now being called the Martian Rendezvous in classified circles, changed everything. The probes weren't just explorers, they were messengers. They had delivered a signal, received a reply, and were now returning to the mothership with their findings. The debate was no longer about whether 3I Atlas was artificial. The new, terrifying question was, who did they just talk to on Mars? Was it a dormant piece of their own ancient technology left behind on a previous visit? Or was it something else entirely? To put it mildly, the world's governments were in a state of controlled panic. The probes had awakened something ancient on Mars: global cover-up. The moment the signal from Mars was confirmed, a curtain of silence fell across the world. You see, this was no longer a scientific curiosity. It was a global security crisis. Within hours, an emergency meeting was called at the Pentagon, bringing together top military leaders from the Space Force, NORAD, and every major intelligence agency. The topic wasn't debate, it was containment. How do you hide the fact that an alien mothership just communicated with something on Mars? The most shocking fact is that they didn't even try to deny it internally. According to a high-level whistleblower, the conversation immediately shifted to threat assessment. What many overlooked was the speed of the global reaction. It was too fast, too coordinated. Within a day, access to public telescope data on 3I Atlas was restricted. Live feeds from the James Webb Telescope were mysteriously recalibrated. NASA issued a bland press release talking about unusual cometary activity and solar interference, deliberately downplaying the magnitude of what had been witnessed. The thing nobody tells you is that this was a coordinated global cover-up. Leaked documents showed that the US, China, Russia, and the European Space Agency had all agreed in a secret emergency protocol to classify all data related to the Martian signal. But you can't keep a secret that big forever. Amateur astronomers who had been tracking 3I Atlas started noticing the missing data. Hacktivist groups began trying to break through the firewalls of government servers. And Avi Loeb, refusing to be silenced, gave a cryptic interview where he warned, "When governments stop talking about something, it is because they are more afraid of the questions than the answers." He spoke of the probes as breadcrumbs, leading us to a much larger and potentially much older story in our own solar system. The cover-up only fueled the fire of public speculation. People started connecting the dots between 3I Atlas, the strange behavior of Oumuamua, and the decades of UFO sightings reported by military pilots. Was this all connected? Was humanity on the brink of a revelation that governments were desperately trying to prevent? The silence from official sources was deafening, and it sent a clear message. They were scared. And if they were scared, then the rest of us should be terrified. The world was on edge, watching and waiting. The final signal from Atlas would not be a conversation. It was a warning. As 3I Atlas prepared to leave our solar system, swinging around the sun and accelerating back into the interstellar darkness, it did one last thing that left the world in stunned silence. It sent out a final massive burst of energy. This wasn't a narrow radio signal aimed at Mars. This was a broad, omnidirectional transmission, a message meant for everyone and everything in our solar system to receive. The signal was incredibly complex, a dense packet of information containing mathematical structures, astronomical charts, and what looked like a biological blueprint. But buried deep inside was one simple repeating pattern that our AI systems could immediately recognize: a countdown. You see, it wasn't a countdown to an arrival. It was a countdown to a departure, and not just its own. The signal contained star maps that showed a cataclysmic event originating from the center of our galaxy, the very place 3I Atlas had come from. A wave of energy, possibly from a chain of supernovas or a galactic core explosion, was expanding outward, and according to the countdown, it was set to reach our solar system in approximately 2,000 years. The most shocking fact is that Avi Loeb believes 3I Atlas was never a ship of exploration. It was a lifeboat. The thing is, for people watching this, it feels like a mystery solved overnight. But are we truly ready for the answer? The probes weren't scouts. They were checking on ancient beacons, perhaps left on planets like Mars during a previous galactic migration thousands of years ago, to see if they were still viable shelters. The mothership's final message wasn't a threat. It was a warning, a gift of knowledge from a civilization that had already fled this same impending doom. They weren't coming for us. They were telling us we needed to leave. What many overlooked in the panic was the elegance of the message. It contained the basic principles of advanced propulsion, energy production, and the location of potentially safe harbors in nearby star systems. It was an escape plan for a species they had never met. Did we just receive a warning from an ancient alien civilization? Or is this all just a cosmic coincidence? Let us know your thoughts below. Like and subscribe for more hidden truths.